By the end of this video, you'll know a method that will let you read all 50,000 plus Chinese characters. Trust! What's up you guys, it's Cole here, and today we'll be making one of the hardest languages in the world seem simple. With over 50,000 plus unique characters and incredibly difficult pronunciation, Mandarin Chinese is regarded to be one of the most difficult languages in the world. But is it really that difficult? The answer is absolutely not. And that's because there's this thing called Chinese Pinyin that takes care of both of those major problems. All Pinyin is a romanization of every single Chinese character that exists. It just takes every single unique Chinese character and breaks down the pronunciation so anybody that understands a Latin alphabet can understand and pronounce it correctly. This really helps to bridge the gap between the two languages since they're so incredibly different. And Pinyin is also an essential tool if you want to type and write out Chinese characters on your phone or any other electronic device. And the best part about Pinyin is that it's so easy to pick up and understand because it contains elements that are already so familiar to you. And I usually don't mess around with teaching other people's languages, I usually leave that to the native speakers, but in this case I felt compelled to do so because above all, Chinese Pinyin is a method used by learners to better understand the language and to make it more familiar. But it's also worth mentioning that as you advance and improve your comprehension of the Chinese language, you will eventually want to start learning the characters. And this means without any sort of Pinyin. It's sort of like taking off the training wheels after you feel comfortable enough with the language. But once Chinese characters are broken down into Latin letters, how exactly can we read them? Let's use the example shi, which means to be. This is the Chinese character for it, this is the Pinyin or romanization for it, and the little dash on it is a tone mark which indicates the tone, which we'll talk about right now. You see, as I said in a previous video, Chinese is a tonal language, which means that even a slight difference in the pronunciation can drastically change the meaning of a word. This may sound incredibly intimidating at first, but it's really just a new concept to get used to and a new pronunciation system. In Chinese, there are four, arguably 5 tones depending on which source you look at, and we're going to look at all 5 of them. In every single instance of Pinyin, there will be the romanized letters and a tone mark, with the tone mark indicating which tone you're going to use in the pronunciation. The first tone is a flat tone, and it looks like this. And just like the name suggests, the pronunciation is completely flat. So for example, before we use the word shi, which is the 4th tone, which we'll talk about later, but if we were to change to the first tone, it would sound like shi. And in this case, it would actually mean wet. So that just goes to show you how one simple change in the tone of your voice can drastically alter the meaning of a word. The second tone is known as the rising tone and looks like this. It's known as a rising tone because you start with a very low pitch in your voice and then you work up to a higher pitch. So back to our example, we already know shi and shi. If we were to add a rising tone to this, it would be shi, shi. And instead of to be or wet, this will actually mean the number 10. The third tone is my personal favorite, and I like to call it the V tone. This is because you pronounce it by starting off at a certain pitch, going down, and then going back up to the original pitch. I call it a V tone because the tone mark looks like this. Exactly what you would expect. But we're going to use a different example for the V tone so that you can come out of this video actually knowing some Mandarin as well as the Pinyin method. So for example, this character means good in Chinese, and it's pronounced hao. You can really hear that V tone if you listen closely. This is also a great opportunity to point out one exception that exists in the Pinyin method. And what better way to exemplify this method than learning how to say hello? In Chinese, hello is ni hao, but since we have 2 characters here that both have the V tone, the first character is going to be pronounced with the second tone, or the rising tone. This just makes it a lot easier to say. So instead of saying ni hao, you just say ni hao, and that's really the only exception. Alright, tone number 4 is really fun too, and it's known as the falling tone. This is a tone that starts off at a certain pitch and then sharply drops. And we actually already used this tone earlier when we said the verb to be, which is shi. We started all the way up here and then we went all the way down here. Shi, 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 shi. And lastly, we have the 5th tone. Unlike the other ones, this one actually doesn't have a tone mark at all. This is because it's very neutral and quick in its pronunciation. So for example, if you wanted to construct a yes or no question in Chinese, you would put the character ma at the very end of the sentence. Ma is a good example of a character that doesn't have a tone mark and is a part of the fifth tone family. But be really careful with this one, because if you accidentally say the first or the third tone, you'll either say horse, which is ma, or mom, which is ma. And the last thing you want to do is call someone's mom a horse. Now, although we have the tone marks down now, there are still some interesting sounds that we need to get through. Because of course, just because we romanize Chinese characters and all doesn't mean that all the sounds are going to match up perfectly. So here are some sounds to look out for. First off, we have the J sound. Of course, in English, we would pronounce this letter as a J, but in Chinese, it's much softer. So if we were gonna say the word for machine in Chinese, we would say ji. And it's also the same sound for the verb to talk, jiang, jiang. A lot of people have trouble differentiating the J sound and the ZH sound in Pinyin, and for good reason, because at first they may sound similar to English native speakers. So to go back to that first word, jiang, which means to talk, we can hear the pronunciation differences if we wanted to say the family name, jiang, jiang, jiang. Another two letters that sound similar in Chinese Pinyin are the X and the SH sounds. To make the SH sound, it's pretty similar to how we do it in English, more like a sh. But the X sound is a little trickier and sounds like sh. So if we were to put it into a word, the word for book would be shu. But if you wanted to say the first character in the verb to need, you would say shi, shi, shu. There you go. Another couple tricky sounds are the ZHI and the CHI sounds in Pinyin. For example, if you wanted to say to eat in Mandarin, you would say chu, but if you wanted to say the first character in the verb to know, you would say zhi, as in 知道. We can even see these side by side, as 知道 means to know, but 迟到 means late. And that's even a tongue twister in and of itself.
知道，知道，知道，知道.
Now the last tricky sound we have to get through is the Q sound, because it sounds absolutely nothing like we pronounce it in English. And for this one, I want you to forget everything that you know about the letter Q in English so that you can adapt yourself to the Q sound in Pinyin. This sound is more like a ch sound, and it's also made in the same point in your mouth where the X is made. So if we wanted to say the number 7 in Chinese, we would say qi, ch, yi, qi, which of course uses the first tone. And just for fun, we're gonna go over a little bonus sound that doesn't exist in English, but does in Mandarin. It has a very unique tone mark that isn't exactly considered its own tone, but rather its own sound. This is because you'll see this strange double dot mark in the Pinyin, but then you'll also see a tone mark on it as well. And to make this weird sound, all you have to do is purse your lips and then make a long E sound. It's sort of like yu, just like in 绿色 or 旅行. But of course that sound will take a bit of practice for anybody that's not a native Chinese speaker. And that's pretty much it, guys. Now you have everything you need to know to go out and read every single Chinese character imaginable. By knowing the tone marks and all of the different unique sounds that the Chinese language can throw at you, there is nothing stopping you from achieving everything you want to do with the Chinese language. I hope you got some value out of this. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed the content, and as always, thanks for watching.